Hi there fabric jugglers, it's Bat here from Fiery Phoenix, and today I'm going to be talking about needles, sewing machine needles in particular. But before I get started, I would like to say a great big thank you to everybody who has taken the time to subscribe to my channel, who's taken the time to watch, like and share these tutorial videos. It means a huge amount to me for you to do that. If you want me to continue making these, which is the actual plan, I'm hoping to up my game to three tutorials a week. Nothing like a plan anyway. And so if that's the case, I need to make sure that I'm making the kind of videos that you're actually interested in seeing and that are actually quite helpful for you. So if you could let me know in the comments below the type of videos that you want to see, some topics for the tutorials, then that would be very helpful to me. Otherwise, I shall just guess, and hopefully it'll still be of use to you. I'm guessing in the right way. Anyhow, back to the needles. I had recently a question from the lovely Emily Hewett. Hi Emily. And the question is, do you have to use a special needle for that particular fabric? Perhaps a good blog would be what needle for what fabric, as I get stuck and I only have the one needle so far. So I've got my notes off to one side. I don't want to be blathering on and getting it all wrong. So the details need to be accurate for this one, and there's a lot of needles out there, so I want to make sure I've got the right information for everyone. Emily, you're not alone. So many new stitchers have only the one needle that came with their machine. It's a generic, universal, standard needle that'll work on quite a few projects, but it won't give you the best results. Quite a few stitchers seem to be nervous about experimenting with different types of needle, so they don't go out and get a denim needle or a ballpoint needle, or maybe they just don't know that they exist. But either way, they're actually causing themselves more difficulties than they potentially could be. So considering that needles aren't really that expensive, this tutorial hopefully for Emily and anyone else who gets a little bit in a pickle about their needles, hopefully this will clarify some of those queries for you. One thing I would say is that everybody that works with fabric and has a sewing machine generally tries to get the best that they can work with. You know, the best quality fabric, the best quality machine, the most quality for the money that they can afford. And yet quite a lot of people just end up taking cheap, nasty, unreliable needles and whacking them in their really expensive sewing machine. So I would recommend that you use decent quality needles, the same as you have the best quality fabrics. You know, the best quality cottons or threads that you can find for your project. Make sure that you're using a good quality needle. When you choose a needle, most people tend to get very focused on the type of fabric they're going to be sewing on, but you do still need to take into consideration the thread that you're going to be working with as well, and they come in different dimensions in the same way that you get different weights of fabric. So you can have a very thin, fine thread, and you can have a nice big chunky thread, and you need to take that into consideration when you're picking a needle. Not the needle for the type of fabric, but the size of the eye of the needle. You know, trying to use a teeny tiny thread in a massive eye on a needle, it just means it's going to be floating around all over the place, and you're going to get snags and tags and skip stitches. Whereas if you have a needle eye that matches the size of the thread you're using, it's going to be a lot neater and nicer and smoother stitches. So that's something that you can apply to every single needle type that I describe. Always get the size of the needle eye that matches the thread that you're using. So firstly, please don't just keep using a needle until it breaks. They're not indestructible. They will snap, they will shear, they will shatter, they will bend. You know, if you leave pins in and you stow over pins, then that can cause the shaft of the needle to bend. But a general rule of thumb is to replace a needle after 8 hours of usage, or at the beginning of every new project that you're running. So you don't want the tips to go blunt, and it'll just ruin your fabric. It'll just spoil your project. So for the cost of a needle, which is negligible really, you might as well just switch them out and replace them. I've got a video on how to switch out needles. If I haven't, I'll get a needle. I'll get a video created to switch out needles. I'll double check that. It's very straightforward, and it really it's just about knowing which needle to use. So on to those. Needle sizes, as I've already said, are based on the type and the weight of the thread that's being used, as well as the fabric that's being sewn, and they range in size from the smallest 8/60 to the largest 20/120. The two numbers are American and European sizing system, but they basically go from the finest of threads and fabrics, which is the smallest number, up to the largest number, which is the heavier weight fabrics and the thicker threads. Generally, each packet of needles would say what type of needle it is, whether that is a universal, a standard, a quilting, a sharp, metallic, top stitch, embroidery, etc. And each type of needle is made for a particular job, and so you should choose it for a combination of the fabric and the thread. Not all needles are created equal. You know, just go for the best quality that you can actually afford to find. I've got links in the description below to some good quality needles. I would recommend that you actually go out to a haberdashers, have a look for yourself, and buy needles in person. But if you can't find them, if you're really struggling, then you can use the links that I've included below. Onto the actual types of needle now. And I've got photographs or images for each needle, so that you can see what they actually look like in a bit more detail, and they're actually applied over the top of the fabric that they work with. So we start off with the ballpoint needle, and this is made to sew on knits for jerseys. The rounded tip doesn't actually damage or tear or break the knitted fibres, which means you still get the elasticity, the stretch, without destroying that as you sew. The denim or jean needle. This is made to sew through densely woven fabrics such as denim or imitation faux leather. It has a medium ballpoint nib, and I say nib, it's because it says ballpoint, tip, a medium ballpoint tip, and a reinforced blade. Some quilters use that when sewing through lots and lots of layers of fabric, or especially high count batiks. A double eye needle. A double eye needle is used with embroidery or top stitching, where you can have decorative threads to produce really pretty seams. They have two eyes, one right above the other, and you can thread two separate threads through them, so that you get different textures or shading effects. These needles use a particular system, which, according to my notes, is a 130/705H system. So you'll find the details on your sewing machine's manual as to whether your machine will be able to handle a double-eyed needle or not. You can also then have double or triple needles. And these again come in a range of types and sizes, but basically double needles are two needles mounted on one shaft, which you'll be able to see from the picture. And you create two rows of stitching at any one time, so you can have a really neat double top row, a double row of top stitching, which will be perfectly aligned, the two lines to each other. When you're using a double needle, you'll need two spools of thread at the top of the machine, but you'll still just use the one bobbin from the base, and it will create a sort of web or lattice effect of stitches at the back of the work. But make sure that you check it first, so that you actually like the way that looks on the reverse before you use the needles on a real project. And you know, as with any of the others, pick the type of needle that is going to work with the type of fabric that you've got. Most packages for the double and triple needles have two numbers. One is the needle size, and the second is the distance between the two needles. Generally they go from 2mm to 6mm. That's not an accurate measurement, but they go from 2 to 6. And remember that they need to fit through the stitch plate. So if you've been using a straight stitching stitch plate without space for a zigzag, then you'll need to change the stitch plate. Otherwise you're going to shatter your needles, and that's just quite heartbreaking when that happens. If you've done it through stupidity, that's really not a good plan. Moving on, we have embroidery needles, which you can use with rayon and speciality machine embroidery threads, including polyesters. They have a long scarf, a smooth groove, and a large eye, which means that the threads are actually protected far more than with a standard needle. They've got a lot more gap around them to work without friction and dragging and rubbing. So you then can use these stunning threads to produce really outstanding embroidery work. It's really can be quite gorgeous. A hemstitch needle is sometimes also known as a wing needle, and it actually has wings at the side of it. It's used to create decorative open work or cut work on tightly woven fabrics. It's a large size needle only, and you do need to be really careful even when you're not sewing with it, because it has little blades on the side. That's what the wings are, because it actually cuts through the fabric. I strongly suggest you use stabilizers and you experiment with any of the decorative stitches that you can use that for before you use that on a real project. And also hand crank the machine as you're trying it out for the first few times to make sure that, again, it's not going to snap off on any of the parts of your machine. You don't want a broken needle. No one wants a broken needle. Leather needles. They have a really sharp point to cut through leather and other heavy non-woven synthetics. So you've got your faux leathers, your leather, and they work, well, they work beautifully, but they cut. So don't try and use that on a fabric that is woven, because it will just slice through and then it will just unravel at every stitch, which is really not what you want. A metallic needle is a must-have for sewing with metallic or other speciality threads. Again, it's another elongated eye so that it doesn't shred the metallic elements off of the thread. If you've struggled with metallics, I'd give it another go using a metallic needle. Just try. It's not really going to hurt anything, just to give it a go. If there's something that you particularly wanted to embellish using a metallic thread, just give it a try and see how it works out. Let me know in the comments if any of these have worked for you, or show some examples of where you've used the different types of needles. And let me know if what I'm saying is total tosh and you found that doesn't work at all, but something else has worked for you. Always open to hearing about where something else has worked for you. That's always what we're about here. And then we have a quilting needle, which is specifically made for piecing and machine quilting. A very thin, tapered design to those needles to let them smoothly pass through lots of layers, so that it eliminates skip stitches and keeps everything even though it's going through the multiple layers of fabric. There is what I call the cheats needle, but don't be put off by that. That's the self-threading needle. I'm only jealous. I don't use them. I haven't got one. It's actually got a slot in the side so that you can just pull the thread through. I was quite nervous because I think they're going to ping out. But they're very helpful for children, for people who have difficulty focusing in, and for people who have trouble with fine motor coordination, if you've got arthritis or some other condition like that. They are quite limited in the sizes that they come in the ranges, and it might be a better option to use a needle threader, or to see if your sewing machine, if it's a newer one, actually has an automatic threader built in. So you can look into that. And again, if you've used that and it's worked really well, or it's not worked at all for you, then you know, that would be great for me to find out about that. Stretch needle has been made specifically for synthetic suede and really elastic synthetic knitwear. It's got a medium ball point so that it prevents stitches, but it's specifically created to not shred and not destroy those particular types of fabric. And then a Topstitch needle has a really large eye and large grooves, so that you can have the prettier top stitching threads, and it gives you much nicer lines and far more even stitches than trying to use a box standard needle. I've already spoken about triple needles, and of course then you come back down to the universal needle, the standard needle, which will work. It will work, but it's not been tailored for any particular fabric. It will work on a pair of jeans, it will work on a t-shirt, it will work on some lingerie and some satin, but it's not going to be the best type of needle for that project. So that's just to give you an idea. If all of this is a little bit too much information all in one go, watch the video back. You can watch it over and over. That's the joy of it being a video. I've also got a blog, an accompanying blog, which has a lot more detail, and it's also got some graphics of the actual construction of a needle. So you've got a really big blown up graphic of a needle. There's no point in me holding one up and trying to point out the various elements to it. So it talks about the scarf, the shaft, the blade, the eye, so on and so forth. And as I've said before, it's also got some links in there to buy some needles if you can't find them any other way. But there we go, Emily. I hope this has helped you, and I hope this has helped anybody else who's watching who was having a little bit of difficulty understanding the different types of needles that were out there and what they were for. If you haven't already, please like the video. Oh, that's a bit much. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up to date with all of the uploads. As I said before, I'm working on my recording schedule right now. So if you want to have any kind of input into that, then please, you need to comment. You need to let me know. Get in touch one way or another. All my contact details are at the end of the video. And you never know, you might even be featured like Emily was in today's video. But I think that's enough waffling for now. But coming soon, I have the second part of the girls dress number 13 from E&M Patterns, where I actually construct the dress. We've already gone through and created the video to show you how to work with a PDF pattern. And coming up, I have, he's so cute, I have a video around this lovely little platypus from Funky Friends Factory. He is just the cutest, and I've had to steal him away from my son because he's already kidnapped him, and this was just my dummy one that I did first. So anyhow, if you want to see all of that, then you will need to subscribe, or at least make the effort to come back and have a look. But I think that's enough of my blathering for now, and I'll see you in the future.